I am Catwoman. Hear me roar.
Batman has a problem. He's only attracted to bad girls. And the Catwoman is the perfect foil for him in that regard.
She has a great relationship with Bruce Wayne and Batman. You know, and you can't do that with, obviously, you can't do that with any other villain. She's the opposite image of Batman.
I wanted to create a female villain because most of the villains prior to that time were males. So I created Catwoman in the image of a woman for a female audience. So that way we would grab the male audience and the female audience.
Well, the key thing I always remember about her is that when she first showed up, she didn't have the costume. She didn't have any costume. She was this beautiful brunette dressed up in like a green dress or something, but nothing flamboyant or superheroine or villainous. It would be another appearance or two before she would have like the cat mask, which would be more like an actual cat head on top of her, before she would finally have the stylized look that we would come to recognize as sort of the purple and green caped version that would last for a good, I would say, 40 years of the character's comic history.
With Catwoman, the filmmakers really had to reinvent the character. You wanted to have somebody who was caught between the two worlds of Batman and the Penguin and Oswald and Bruce. So what better way to show that than a character who is somewhat in conflict with herself, who goes from being a very mousy, put-upon woman who comes back to avenge the crime that was done to her.
Selina.
That's my name, Maximilians. Don't wear it out or I'll make you buy me a new one.
The DC version of Catwoman and the TV version of Catwoman, she was much tougher, you know, openly like aggressive female from the get-go. And like all she did was throw on a costume. And to me, that wasn't interesting. And just, you know, saying, okay, this is the way it was there, now I'm gonna do it that way too. It was completely uninteresting to me. And I was willing to, like, you know, quote unquote, lose the job. That was my take, to really start her off as like kind of a lowly secretary. You know, I love in the fact that in the film that Michelle Pfeiffer doesn't even have a close-up until like 20 minutes in the movie, that she's kind of in the background of scenes and like you don't really see her. That I wanted that it was this, you know, this woman that starts off low and it becomes about empowerment, and it goes beyond feminism into something creepy and feminine, like something scary and dark. So I really felt like I was giving this a twist in a good way.
I just love a big, strong man who's not afraid to show it with someone half his size. Be gentle, it's my first time.
I suppose Catwoman is the alter ego of Selina. Selina's, you know, a dreary secretary lost in a big city with no excitement in her life. And Catwoman's her alter ego. She goes out in the night, she avenges herself, she punishes men, she does whatever she wants, and she dresses in sexy clothes. I saw a photograph in a magazine of a sculpture that I think a German sculptress had done. And it was a woman's head and shoulders, and it was sewn together as though she was a patchwork, and it was the most bizarre-looking thing you've ever seen. It was very sinister and strange, but it's very sexual. And I took this photograph to Tim Burton, and I said, you know, I think you might like this. And of course, he liked it a lot. And so the whole concept of the Catwoman costume actually grew out of this one photograph that I'd found by chance.
So what are we waiting for? Let's consummate our fiendish union.
What are you talking about?
Put the stitching in there to kind of represent her kind of patchwork fragmentation of her character.
I wouldn't touch you to scratch you.
We came up with the concept that her raincoat, her slicker raincoat that she had, which we established in the film, she cut up and in one night manufactured this fantasy costume for herself. The trouble with superheroes is, where do they get their costumes? You know, they're suddenly wearing this very slickly made costume. It was decided that Catwoman shouldn't have a tail. So I came up with the idea that perhaps we could use a whip that represented the tail. And at one point, we did consider it being worn on the back of the body, and she put... So it was a sort of euphemism for her tail. But of course, it became a wonderful sexual thing. We'd done screen tests, which no one was allowed to see us shooting. Mary and I got Michelle all dressed up. We painted in silicone. We gave her the whip. She had a stacked 6-inch heels, and the face was done, everything, the makeup. And the next day, we had to go with all the heads of Warner Brothers to a screening room. And we're all sitting there, this image of Michelle came on the screen, and there was just stunned silence in the room because there was this unbelievably, obviously sexual image of a woman in black, shiny, hand-stitched rubber with stacked heels and a whip. And so I didn't know how to get out. I was stuck sitting there and nobody said anything. So I just stood up and grabbed Mary by the hand and we walked down the aisle. And I said, "Not bad, gentlemen, not bad, huh?" And we walked out of the screening. It didn't have to look too slickly made. It was actually made of rubber, and poor Michelle had to be painted with wet silicone every shot, repainted to get the shine.
I don't think the corset was so much of a problem because it was made by Phil Reynolds, who specialises in ballet and opera, and ballet dancers and opera singers can wear surprisingly tight corsets and still sing and dance. The process of getting the rubber suit on, not much fun, it's so tight and a bit laborious. Obviously very high heels. The mask was not her favourite thing. And there was a lot of adjustment had to be made so that, obviously, as her face was moving, the edge could just pinch into her skin a little bit and it wouldn't be very flattering. And I had endless fittings with her, and every time she saw me coming, she kind of thought, "Oh no, not her again."
We initially had cast Annette Bening as Catwoman, and did wardrobe things and all sorts of fittings and stuff. And really close to shooting, I got a call one morning, and sort of long pause on the phone, and she said she was pregnant, and I was like I've never had like such a split mixed feeling in my life. I was like very extremely happy for her, and then was like dropping down a dark abyss at the same time.
And it was kind of a crazy period because I would say every single actress from 20 to 45 on the planet wanted to be Catwoman, and we were kind of barraged.
Sean Young, who had originally been set to play the lead in the first picture, wanted very much to do the Catwoman. And she appeared in cat costume one day at the studio.
I thought that it would work to be sort of like aggressive in the sense that that's what Catwoman would have done. She would have just gone, "Rawr," and she would have gone in there, and that's just what I did. I did like a major kind of Catwoman adventure.
The next thing I knew, my office door flew open, which tells you about the difference in security these days. And Michael Keaton and I saw Sean Young dressed as Catwoman leap over my sofa and say, "I am Catwoman." We looked at each other and went, "Whoa."
I was only told about it, but the eyewitnesses I believe. I don't think it was a UFO sighting or the legend of Bigfoot kind of a situation. I think the resources are fairly reliable.
When Michelle Pfeiffer expressed an interest, something just clicked where we thought, she's perfect. She also could be both Selena Kyle and Catwoman.
I met with Tim, and I found him very unusual and interesting, and he explained the part to me. And I thought it would be a couple of scenes and probably, not a fully developed character. Then to my surprise, I read the script, and I found she was just very, actually more complicated than I could have even imagined, just sort of psychologically. The movie was very much shot out of sequence. So it was a challenge to know where I was half the time, and also it's real ensemble, so every scene, every moment counts. You don't have a whole movie to develop a whole character. In the morning, I was sort of like on this assembly line, and I would be handed from one person to the next, and I felt like I was in Oz. Just my character was such a huge production every day. And it's not even to say what's going on with Danny, what's going on with Michael, what's going on with the set. They're moving buildings around, and I would get lost on the stage all the time because I would walk and they would have moved everything around, and I could never find my way to the set. That's never happened to me before. Hey, stud. I thought we had something together.
Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman is awesome. She was kind of slinky and kind of vampy and in a kind of campy, kind of Julie Newmar way, but still she had like a real underlying psychotic edge to her. You know, you knew at any moment she could really, really go off and do somebody some real harm.
It's one of my favorite performances of anything I've been around, you know.
For the most part, I really approached it from the standpoint of the psychology of the character and this dual personality and what that meant, and everything really springing from that. Sometimes her sexuality will come out of a manipulation, sometimes it will come out of a playfulness, and sometimes it'll be very real. And we didn't exactly know where those moments were going to be. And then after a while, it just kind of took on a life of its own. And it became obvious where it had to be.
Catwoman is best described as an anti-hero because she's not a villainess in the most diabolical of senses. She's not a murderess. She's not about gaining vengeance for any particular thing. She's basically about kind of the anarchy of stealing from the man in a way.
That's the thing that's always been intriguing about this part. People come up to me now and they say, now, is she a good guy or is she a bad guy? And they're confused because it was always left very ambiguous. And I always liked that. I always liked that they just let it be that.
She was very impressive. I mean, two things that impressed me extremely was when the cats were kind of bringing her back to life for sort of eye flutter and her eyes opening up. I still find that really chilling and amazing. And then that moment where, she put a live bird in her mouth and held it there for several seconds and then let it fly out. I mean, I don't know too many people that would do that. She did it several times. And no bird or person was injured. Discovering just how lethal she can be and just sort of what she wants to destroy.
One of the things Catwoman wants to destroy is Shrek's department store, which is owned by an evil, scheming mega millionaire who also just happens to be the boss of Secretary Selena Kyle, Catwoman's dual identity. And Catwoman's tool for this destruction? The bullwhip.
Anthony, the longest. He was a great teacher.
I'm Michelle Pfeiffer's whip trainer and choreographer. Most people, have a tendency to raise their eyebrow when you say whip. The trick about it is traveling faster than the speed of sound. I'm breaking the sound barrier. So there is a certain hazard to it because it can cut skin, it can break bones. She is doing things with the whip that will make Indiana Jones green. That 90% of the people who do this for a profession can't do.
In this scene, Catwoman wants to whip off the heads of 4 mannequins, and Michelle's 3 months of training really paid off. She performed this difficult and potentially dangerous scene perfectly on the very first take.
Action, Michelle!
Michelle was doing the weirdest things in this movie in terms of things that she had to do. A couple hours to put this makeup, put this costume. Now come and use this whip, Here, put this bird in your mouth.
Nice birdie. Yeah. No, I don't think I've worn any rubber suits in any other movies.
It's just all really fun.
She's luscious. She's beautiful. She should be mine.
One thing with the black rubber, it almost looks liquid on the body. I mean, she looks like she's wearing black glass. I mean, it's incredibly beautiful. And when you get someone who can really move, like a cat, which Michelle can, it's very fluid looking. It doesn't look like clothes.
I don't know whether to open fire or fall in love.
She's a very feline creature, and she starts identifying with the cats and then literally makes herself a homemade cat suit. We wanted it to be tight to the body and sexy, and that's an obvious area to go into. I mean, especially with someone like Michelle Pfeiffer, who's, got legs for days. And, you want to expose all those wonderful limbs and everything.
The first time I put the outfit on, I thought, I can't walk, I can't breathe, I can't hear, I can't act like this. And that's how I felt. It took me a long time to get used to all of the elements.
She's so talented. There was never any question in my mind that not only was she going to be really terrific in this, but she was going to figure out how to do this.
When I saw her, the immediate impression I got is that she's a great match with Michael Keaton. I mean, they're just, you know, there's 4 great eyes there, you know, between the two of them. And that's very important to these characters, is what comes through.
He sees himself in this woman. And there are points where, if you really want to examine it, they almost lose themselves in each other. You got kind of a dark side, don't you?
No darker than yours, Bruce. It was a challenge. It was actually one of the most challenging roles I've done. The thought of busting Batman makes me feel all dirty.